The Things We All Carry is a podcast about first responders and their stories surrounding trauma on the job. The intention of this podcast is to raise awareness and share meaningful conversation around the subject often viewed as taboo or simply ignored. Be aware this content may be graphic and it is real. It may not be suitable for children or adults triggered by this subject.
Welcome to episode 71 of The Things We All Carry. It's been a couple months since I put out a call for people interested in doing an impromptu interview. This is another in that series of pop-up interviews. Ryan is a captain with SacMetro in California. He responded to my message and waited patiently as our schedules seemed to never align. Luckily, we were able to sit down and record recently. Ryan shares his own story of trauma and recovery before discussing his work as a peer support coordinator in his department. From deadly auto accidents to near misses on house fires, we talk about how and why it affected him. Ryan also talks about his experience with EMDR as well as brain spotting. His goal with the peer support program centers on making certain other firefighters know they aren't alone and are made aware of all the resources available to them. We kind of joined this conversation as he and I are already rolling along. I never got to do my typical lead-in for a guest, but it seemed like the right thing at the time. A quick reminder to please help us build a community which not only recognizes but supports each other through the struggles and recovery. Reach out through Instagram at The Things We All Carry or email mystory@thethingsweallcarry.com to offer support and share your story. Please remember to leave a review on iTunes and give a shout out to any first responder you know, love, or care about. Y'all enjoy the show. So I've screwed this up a couple times where I've had conversations, got done with some pretty emotional stuff, and then discovered that I lost a recording, and I just don't want to do it for anybody ever again like that. So
I get it. Makes sense.
So what I'll do is with these, it's easiest for me to just say, you know what? How do I record on Zoom though?
If you find your screen at the bottom, it should be a record button. You can get the little tab
right there. Yeah,
up.
perfect.
Recording in progress.
There we go.
There we go.
All right. See, you're teaching, so you're along for the ride as much as I am. Thanks. So
No worries.
I think the easiest way to do this is that I put out a call for people that maybe wanted to talk off the cuff, and you answered, and it was just one of those times where we were kind of struggling to find time to meet up, and finally today works. So Why don't I just throw the ball in your court, let you kind of introduce yourself, where you are, who you are, what you do, and then we'll go from there and see what we get into.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, my name's Ryan. I'm a captain here in Sacramento area, SacMetro Fire. It's kind of it's a large department, covers over 400 square miles. And it basically kind of covers all the county area outside of Sacramento City. So we've got Sac City Fire, then we kind of cover all the kind of either unincorporated areas or the small towns. We got Citrus Heights and Rancho Cordova. And so it was kind of put together in 2000 by a bunch of small departments, and they came together and just made one big department. And I got hired in 2002. Been a captain since 2014. And been online all 20 years. I haven't gone on days or anything like that. And kind of got not sucked into the peer support stuff, but my wife was going to school to be an MFT, and this program popped up, and I asked her about it. She goes, "Yeah, you should do it. You know, at least we're kind of both studying the same thing." And she's very intuitive. We've known each other since high school, so I think she saw some changes in me as my career was going on. And so I took the class. It was a 3-day basic class, and I did what most people do. They take the class and then they just go back to the fire station, don't do really much with it, and so and then as time progressed, the more I didn't know at the time, more signs and symptoms of some stress was popping up, and then had a pretty significant call that really kind of pushed me into more of a leadership role for peer support. We have a gentleman that kind of got it going in our area, and so he was trying to take a step back from some of the administrative stuff, and so I just volunteered, and so I've been doing that for about 4 or 5 years, and we're trying to kind of build a program to where one or two people aren't handling everybody's issues. We've got probably 650 suppression. That's not even including, support staff and fleet and all those kind of those people. And so it's a fairly big department in our area. It's the biggest department in our area. And so it's quite a lot. And just kind of been doing that for the last 4 or 5 years, trying to build that program up. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Let's start with you though. Where'd you grow up? In Sacramento?
No, I grew up in Stockton.
Okay. For
So a little
those
bit
of
south.
us on the East Coast, explain where that is in relation.
Yeah, so Stockton is about an hour south of Sacramento,
Okay.
right in the middle of the San Joaquin Valley. So we're it's one of those places where you're an hour and a half from the snow and an hour and a half from the beach. We're right in the middle of California. Stockton is a difficult place to kind of live. It's had its share of problems, and I was kind of happy to get out, to be honest. And went to school, finished at Sac State, was going to be a physical therapist, and did some internships. Ironically, they should have you do the internships at the beginning, because when I did them towards the end of my schooling, it was boring. I mean, you're sitting there and you're just kind of rubbing, the ultrasound on people, and the day took forever. And my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, recommended, hey, what's about firefighting or EMT, paramedic, that kind of stuff. And so took a first responder class at Sac State and loved it. And then immediately when I graduated, went to EMT school and got a job down in Stockton with AMR. And it's kind of the Wild West down there. It was busy, and there's a lot of traumatic calls. There's no real trauma center. So if you got a shooting, you just took them to wherever. And it was kind of all hands on deck with whatever hospital you ended up at. And did that for about a year, and then went to paramedic school and finished all that. That took another year, and that was challenging. We were on a Kelly system, which is 1 on, 1 off, 1 on, 1 off, 1 on, 4 off. I don't know if you guys have that out
That's
there.
exactly what I'm working, and it's horrible.
Okay. Yeah, it's challenging.
Yeah.
And so I was working A shift. I was interning on B shift, but basically working 96s and only getting C shift days off.
That's brutal.
Yeah, it was challenging. It was a rough time. The good thing was I was young, 24, 25. So, you feel like you're invincible at that point. And you're like, oh, I'll be fine. I can handle it. But got through it and got my paramedic license, upgraded in Stockton. And that was very, that was some of the best training I got. Was Stockton Fire at the time was kind of trying to be ALS. They still had a lot of rigs that were BLS. So there were a lot of calls where I was the only paramedic on scene, and you're just trying, you're kind of assholes and elbows trying to get things done with whatever help you could get. And so that was entertaining, to say the least, and, especially for a young guy just getting in there. That was kind of what I was thirsting for, was some action, and Stockton certainly provides that. And then just started testing around the state. And back then, it was one of those, it was the environment where you'd have 1,500 people testing for fire departments, and they were hiring 4 or 5 people. And so I just started testing. I drove to Monterey, Salinas. I was driving to Berkeley, and started just testing around. And finally, I took SacMetro's test the first time. They had a written test. Didn't know there was a booklet involved with what the test was going to be on, and augured in on that. And like, okay, well, I'll keep testing. It was fine. And then they tested again about a year and a half later and passed. And, I was sitting at Cal Expo, which is a big, kind of where we hold the state fair. It's this big, fairgrounds area. And we were just elbow to elbow, just kind of like cattle in this, cattle guard here. And we're all just kind of shuffling in to take this test. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to, even if I pass this test, there's 2,000 people here all fighting for jobs. And luckily scored high enough. I got, having the booklet helps, when you're prepared for the test.
Yeah, it makes a little bit of a difference, doesn't it?
A little bit of a difference, yeah. And did well and got an interview and just kind of, you take one step at a time. You pass the physical and you talk to another chief. So there's another chief interview, and back then, Metro was only 2 years old, so they were still trying to figure out what they were at the time. They had, they took 6 or 7 departments and just kind of molded it. So you had a bunch of guys that were fire chiefs that are now deputy chiefs or assistant chiefs, and figuring out what their new job is. And, so it was, we all had our growing pains, but eventually got hired on, and just, at the time we transport here in the county. And so basically they were looking for paramedics to staff all the ambulances, because for years they had hired. So they had a bunch of people that were on medics for 10 years, just getting their teeth kicked in. And so they hired a whole bunch of medics. They did hire some EMTs back then. And then just started riding the ambulance. Had a year of probation, which was challenging on the ambulance, because you're so busy. You get suited up, you go do a wet drill, throw some ladder. There's so few medics, you're in service. And so immediately when you get a call, you're just sweaty, and throw your stuff back on the rig and go run a call. And it's a very busy system, and it's just been getting busier. So from there, just been, slowly running calls, and then promoted engineer a little while after that, to captain, and that's kind of where I'm at. So I've been doing it now for 20 years and going up on 21. And yeah.
So you said that your wife picked up on changes.
Yeah. So, when was that? That was probably about 2015, 2016. So we have 4 kids, and at the time she wasn't working. So single income. So I was working a bunch of overtime. So I was working 13 days out of the month, or 14, depending on mandatories and all that, 13, 14 days a month. So it was busy. I don't sleep well at the fire station. Even if we don't run calls, I still wake up, just groggy. And then when I would come home, have a drink, or 1 or 2, and then 2 turns into 3, and at the time it feels good, but then somebody needs something, or something breaks, or somebody needs dinner. And so all those things would just compound over time, and got way more irritable, just short with people, which I'm sure a lot of people get with their spouse. Where are you? You're not here with us. And, me being the way I am, like, I'm right here. I just, that kind of stuff. And so she started noticing that stuff. And then I had a moment, which was, I think my daughter at the time was 8, and one of my sons was my daughter and my son. So I have 3 boys and a girl. The daughter was 8. The son that was there was 11 or 12, and they're downstairs, and they're probably just playing, but they're loud, and it's the noise. It's that, you get that, the abrupt noise was driving me nuts.
Yeah.
And I snapped, I went down, and they were just playing in the hallway, but you kind of just, it's kind of like the shark in Finding Nemo, where the eyes just turn black. And that's kind of where I was. There was no reason for it. Snapped, and it was about a minute tirade of yelling and cuss words. And I still remember this to this day. My poor daughter was kind of crouched in her bedroom with her hands over her ears. And I saw it, and I just couldn't stop. It was kind of like tipping over a glass of milk. I was off to the races with this rant. And I didn't even wait for a reply. I let it out and turned around and walked outside and just sat out back, knowing exactly what I did. Couldn't stop it. And I just sat out there for probably 45 minutes till my wife came home. And I didn't check on him. I didn't do anything. I was just sitting outside. And finally my wife came outside. I knew my son had probably would tell her, and I'm glad he did. And she came out, and she was looking at me like, what the hell just happened? And I go, I don't know. I don't know. I just snapped. They probably weren't doing anything wrong. They're loud. And, I'm sure I tried to explain it. He goes, how they get, they're just loud. It's driving me nuts. And just snapped. And she goes, well, she was very direct. She goes, that's never going to happen again. You need to go talk to somebody. And I go, you're right. Okay. And so I immediately called up the firefighter I was talking about earlier that kind of set up the peer support program here. I called him, and he set me up with a clinician. Um, and it was interesting because we've been to marriage counseling and that kind of stuff in the past. And I felt like I had a good grasp on when I needed it, I didn't need it. And I was like, at the time I thought I'm okay with this stuff. And obviously after this, I was like, no, there's probably something more going on here. And went and talked to a clinician, and she's like, well, why are you here? And I go, I've got some anger issues, I think, going on, more irritability. And I told her the whole, it's something probably half the session to go through the whole issues with my wife or with the kids and why I was upset and this and that, how I felt. And she goes, well, that sounds like a very interesting day. She asked how my kids were. And at that point, I had talked to them and apologized. And I could tell my daughter was still shooken up by it. And so, clinician was like, okay, so I'm going to ask you something. You're going to think it's completely unrelated. Okay, well, let's have it. She goes, why don't you tell me about the worst call you've ever been on? I go, that's interesting. It doesn't, I didn't put the two and two together. I was like, I don't think that has anything to do with this, but I sat back and thought about it and go, well, there's two calls that immediately pop up. He goes, well, I'll just pick one and we'll go through both of them. And so I went through the two calls. One was from 2001 when I was still in Stockton, and there was this vehicle accident with the car caught on fire. There were a couple kids that got killed, and very, very big incident. And went through all the details. I mean, I could remember the smell of the car on fire, going around to where this other car was. And it was the first time, basically a car tried to pass somebody, clipped cars, and all these other cars start, just everybody's kind of tail spinning at that point. And an Explorer caught on fire, a mom and a kid burned up in there. And thankfully, some bystanders were able to pull the other two kids out, but they were burned. So as I'm walking up, I can see the two kids screaming. They've got burns. Car's still on fire. And the fire department's just now getting water on it. I go around them. They tell me there's another car behind it. Couldn't see it because of the car fire. So I get over there and I can see there's people in a Volvo. One kid, the driver has her arm hanging out the window. I look in there and there's three kids in the back and two adults in the front. And I go up to the arm. I go up to the lady who was driving the car. I go, hey, are you okay? Are you okay? And she's dead, which caught me by surprise. It's been the first time I just kind of walked up on somebody that you expect to be alive. She was dead. I look at the kid behind her. He's dead. I look at the other kid that's in the middle, who's in a car seat. She looked dead, but she ended up being, had passed away. And so then passenger seat kid was alive. He was in pain, screaming. And then the passenger in the front seat had, I think, two broken femurs, and, they were trying to cut her out. So it was so I've gone through this whole call with the clinician, and she goes, wow, that sounds like, obviously a very intense call. And then she asked me about the other call, and it was a Rancho Cordova is a little bit outside of, a little east of Sacramento. It's a town, it's a city. And they have a, Rancho PD is basically Sac County Sheriffs. They contract with them to do the policing. And there's this old officer, ride a motorcycle. He always had a stogie in his mouth, salty guy. And he was going after an individual that was speeding, and he got clipped and did the whole motorcycle wobble. He's probably going 35, maybe a little faster. Lays the bike down. He's skidding feet first down the road and it's going 30 miles an hour, somebody to a 4x4 post, and the post kind of gets his legs and takes a leg off. So by the time we get there, there's obviously chaos already. There was another engine already there. I was on an engine at the time driving, and I could see his partner. Like, all I saw was his partner in the gutter, just wailing, just screaming. And then as we pulled past to kind of block traffic, I see a leg in the gutter. Whoa, what is going on here? We go up, we start treating them, and I recognize them. We go to calls with them. He would be one of those cops that would come by the station, hang out, do paperwork, and you kind of got to know him a little bit. So obviously he passed away. So these were calls that I went over with the clinician that what I learned later, very specific on the details. I could remember very specific things on those. And she brought that up and she goes, well, tell me about the last 3 calls you ran last set. I couldn't remember them. They're all kind of they all kind of molded in the same. They're all the same. Okay, sick, belly pain, whatever. She goes, so the way she described it was those calls were, they're right in your face. They're still there. You haven't processed them. You probably just didn't even want to talk about them, which is true.
I was going to say, of course you don't want to talk about them.
Right. Yeah. And so we started doing some EMDR with both of them. And it took several sessions and worked for me. It was very helpful, and also got some more tools as far as how that, learning how those calls, the whole cup fills up and spills over. And it wasn't those calls. It was all the other calls, the lack of sleep, the drinks at night. Now, what I realized, you drink at night, days off, now you're not sleeping well at home or at work. And it just, everything compounds. And so started learning all that stuff, and realizing the impact was that, when I was 20, I could handle it. Now, at the time I'm 35, 36, and it's wearing on me a little bit. So that was that. Those were after doing all that therapy, seeing the clinician and having those treatments, or the therapy, so to speak, just gave me a lot more tools as far. And the other thing I learned was like, these are some things to watch out for when you're coming home. Cause we're on 4896s now. So we're there 2 days, but if you're up for 2 days, she's like, just realize when you're walking through that door, every family wants to see you. They want to hug you. They want to do things with you. You may not be ready for that. And she goes, talk to your wife about it. She's probably learning it in school anyways, but, have those conversations. And what helped with that was I could tell my wife, I need to take a nap. I need some time alone. I'll re-engage here in a little bit, but I need some time. And so and she's been very understanding of that. And she actually, it's been helpful where she recognizes it sometimes. If I don't, she'll sit there and go, hey, look like you might need to take a nap or take some time. I'll handle dinner, I'll handle the kids. Why don't you go relax a little bit? And that's been very helpful. So that's kind of where that led to.
So what year was that when you did the EMDR?
Let's see, it's probably been 48, it might be 10 years now, 10 years ago.
What was your experience with it? How was it set up for you? Like, cause I've heard, some people have used noise, some people have used light, some people have used just like fingers moving back and forth. How was that set up for you? And why did you find it to be so effective?
So the way she set it up, I had earphones on my head, and then she had, I think there were waves, crashing waves, and it would go left to right. And the way she described it was, all I want you to do is just listen to music, and you go through those calls from beginning to end, over and over and over. And how she described, she's like, you're never going to forget those calls. But she kind of described how it's kind of trapped in your brain a little bit. By doing the sound on both sides, it kind of unlocks those parts of your brain so you can process it a little bit. And it goes from being right in your face to just, arm's length away. It's out there still, but you're not holding that trauma so much. It's kind of processing it a little bit. And kind of what I've learned is, I'm sure you've read, The Body Keeps the Score, and some other guys that have done some intense trauma stuff, is the more you kind of talk about it, the more you can process it. It doesn't sit there as much. That makes sense.
That makes total sense. Yeah. It's not as ever present.
Right. Yeah. And so that's how it, and typical fireman, I was like, oh, it's voodoo. This is magic. This isn't going to work for me. And it took some time. I mean, she would ask me, it was weird. If I would bring up the call with her, you kind of feel it in your chest a little bit of, I guess, anxiety or something like that. Like, that you're walking towards. I know I'm walking towards the car. I know I'm going to find some dead kids and a dead driver. Okay, well, keep processing a little bit. And it just got easier and easier. And talking about it, because I might have told my wife's broad strokes on that call, but I never told her details, which I still don't know that I have, but I probably never told anybody details on that. And so it was just a way to kind of, however it works in the brain, going left to right, and constantly going over it in your head. It works for me. I've also done brain spot. I had another call where I had to go back and do some brain spotting, and that one was weird.
Hey guys, quick break right here just to check in and thank each of you for listening to the show. Your support has been paramount, and I appreciate all of you. I have one request, though. I need you to share the show with everyone you know. Help me get the word out and spread these stories as far and as wide as we can. While you're at it, please leave a review of the show wherever you happen to listen. Feel free to reach out to me at any time to share your story, to talk, or to pass on suggestions. Let's get on with the rest of the show.
No, I was going to ask you to kind of explain that.
Oh, yeah. The brain spotting one was attached to another call. This call actually got me more into the peer support world. We had I'm just at the dinner table telling war stories. I was on a truck. So down here in Sac County, we run a lot of house fires. That's kind of our bread and butter. A lot of garage fires and house fires, 1 stories, 2 stories. That's kind of mostly what we do. And so it was 2 a.m. We got dispatched to a house fire. The station I was at was engine, truck, medic, and battalion chief. So all 4 rigs pile out of there. We show up and it's a 1-story house that had been remodeled. It's a home and board kind of facility. So it was probably a 3-tier house, 3 bedrooms, 2 bedroom. And the guy had kind of chopped it up, made it bigger. It was like a 9-bedroom, 3-bathroom house, which you don't expect all the time in some of these areas. And so we got there and there was fire sort of Bravo side. You guys use out Bravo, Delta?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Fire on the Bravo side. We had fire blowing out of the Charlie side. And we were on the truck. There's just smoke pumping out of the eaves. So we laddered it. And it's dark and smoke and you can't see very well. We ended up having a burst hose line underneath. And what I didn't know at the time, the guy, when he remodeled it and extended it, he just put a new roof over the old roof. So we had a pitch over a pitch roof, which we have places where you have pitch over flat, but we don't have pitch over pitch, especially in that particular area. So we cut a hole, we louvered. I'm hitting the first roof. I'm not getting anything. And I can hear they got a busted hose line. They're trying to get another line back there. And now I've got a blowtorch out of that hole. Back up a little bit. By our ladder, I had sounded, I was already punching through the decking and had smoke out of there. So I figured I had fire between us and our ladder. And so I called for another ladder on the Bravo side. The initial ladder was on the Delta side. So called for ladder on the Bravo side, backed up, cut another hole and hit the roof again. And now basically the fire was between both roofs. And so nobody can get to it because they're not getting to it from underneath and I'm not punching through. So that internal thought was like, all right, well, we're done. It's time to get out of here. I assumed we had a ladder on the Bravo side. Took 1 step, went in up to my hip. My firefighter with the saw went in. He reached for me, went in up to his knee. And so now we've got smoke and fire kind of all around us. And I get on the radio, punch out a mayday. So we were able to kind of pull ourselves out and tell my firefighter, hey, go back to our ladder. That's kind of our only shot at this point. And so he heads back and I bear crawl. I basically bear crawled across the roof and got off the ladder. I had a burn on my hip, so I was uncomfortable a little bit. And, it was a very intense call. So that was day 1. That was our first night. So we were supposed to work the next day and ended up getting sent home because of the burn. And as I'm driving home, it's about a 35-minute drive to get home. I just pulled over and broke down. I was a mess. Just pulled myself together. I'm exhausted. I've been up since 2 a.m. And you start going, what the hell did I miss? What did we miss? What happened? This is what we did these calls all the time. And these weird construction features, things weren't going right. Those whole Swiss cheese holes were lining up pretty quick. And so, pull myself together, drive home. My wife's home. She's still a stay-at-home mom at the time. And she's like, what are you doing home? I started telling her what happened. Fall apart again. I'm just a mess at this point. And the peer support lead met me at the burn center initially. He's like, hey, call me later. I'm going to get some sleep, but call me. So Matt, and woke up, called him, and got set up with an appointment with another clinician. Because I knew it had always kind of scrambled my brains a little bit because I was falling apart. I couldn't hold it together. So I went and saw, it was a different clinician, and told her what happened. And we started doing some brain spotting. And it's weird. It's weird because I can't explain how it works or why it works. But, she's got a pointer, and she's like, how do you feel here? She's just holding it. I go, I feel okay there. And then she'd move it. And at a certain point, you just kind of feel a little, for me, it was a little anxiety, a little tingling. Like, I don't feel very comfortable here for some reason. He goes, all right, just stay there. Now let's start talking about this incident. So somehow, wherever your eyes line up, it connects with that part of your brain that's kind of dealing with the trauma. And I'm probably not explaining it all the way correctly, but just stay there wherever you don't feel comfortable, and we're going to talk about it and process it and go through it. So I don't remember how many sessions I did with her, but it worked. It kind of got me through that. I still had some issues. We had a big AAR afterwards, and as you're going through the call, the radio traffic's ramping up, and I know it's coming, and I start getting sweaty hands and all that stuff. And so it was something I still had to process through. But I really realized at that point, as far as peer support, I appreciated him meeting me at the burn center. It was 6 a.m. at that point. And just checking in, just going, hey man, you know what this is going to do. It's going to, this is a big incident, because he had a similar one that's kind of what got him into it. And so, I don't know if I'm just, I know there's clinicians, and my wife could explain much better than I can, because she does it now. She does brain spotting. But it's a very calming situation. And for me, it worked. They both worked to just, and I think more of it is just talking about it. And the more times you talk about it, the easier it gets. It doesn't kind of stick in there quite so much.
I think that's what they all kind of have in common is the fact that it brings it out of you no matter what. Whether it's EMDR, where you're doing the left-right brain type, retraining, or if it's the brain spotting, whatever it is, you're still having to talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of in my imagination, I see them both as a reordering of the thoughts.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that way.
Yeah. And we've sent some people to University of Central Florida that are doing some heavy duty trauma stuff.
Restores.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's very intense, and it basically makes you process it. The more times you go through it,
I had to look at which episode it was. I talked to Chris. He's from Florida. He went to Restores, and it was a fascinating conversation. He did. Yeah, he does. He described it as more of a desensitization training or a therapy, which I didn't realize was kind of a thing, but I guess it's kind of rebranded in a way under some of these other names. So I'm a little familiar with Restores, and so I know kind of what their program is about. It's a fascinating facility.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like it.
So then how do you get, I know you briefly touched on it. How do you get into the peer support? You kind of fell into it, and your wife kind of suggests the training, correct?
Yeah. So basically what happened, firefighter named Jeff was basically the lead. And he still is. He's kind of the guy, right? If you need something, you call Jeff. And the region here had built a regional peer support program, and he was in charge of our fire department. And at a certain point, especially after the fire, after the one where he met me at the burn unit, he sent out an email, because he was always in charge of classes. We got quarterly trainings, we got some classes coming up, and he would track everybody and get people to come. And at a certain point, he goes, hey, I'm looking to step back from all the administrative stuff. I just want peer support. Does anybody want to do it? I'm like, sure, I'll do it. I think, I'll take some load off of his plate. And so we met, and he had to tell me this multiple times, because I'm not, he started getting into the budget, and here's all the money we have for this and administrative leave hours. So when we're training, if you're in peer support, you get time off if you're on duty. So the district has agreed to cover that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what I agreed. I like, hey, and he walked me through it for about a year and a half still. And I'm still in touch with him on certain things. Cause he kind of built our program. So that's kind of how I got more involved in it. And we realized between the 3 shifts, it would make sense to have one person on each shift kind of responsible for whatever happens on those shifts. Because obviously if I'm off and something's going on right now, it'd be nice to have somebody at least scheduled there. So
Right.
we added a coordinator for each shift. So there's A, B, and C shifts. I stayed on B. So really I'm just a lead. I'm not the lead. I'm a lead that also does the budget and administrative stuff. And there's a regional meeting I got to go to every month. And that's actually quite interesting. It's the union here, 522, covers, I don't know what it is, 6 departments in the region. So Sac City, us, Folsom, Roseville's not in it, but they cover all the surrounding areas here. And the history on it's a little cloudy for me, but my understanding is they decided to start a peer support program, a regional one. And so there's a committee where each department that's involved meets once a month, and we have a clinician, we have a peer support professional in there, we've got a chaplain in there. And so we just meet, we talk about what we're going to do in the region as far as classes and trainings and that kind of stuff. And so we've and everybody pitches in. Pay, I think it's $15 per person in the department. So, our bill is around 10 grand a year. And if you're a smaller department, it's a couple $100. And we talk about the different kind of trainings that we want to do and need to do and that kind of stuff. And for example, lately the last year and a half or so, we've included spouses. So we realized that spouses don't know what we're doing for, whatever it is, 2-3 days at a time. And we come home, been gone for that amount of time, and they just want to hang out with us, talk to us, do stuff with us. And most of us are like, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to make a decision. I just want to sit over here and decompress. And so we started having spousal classes where only spouses could go. We bring in some professionals and some clinicians and just kind of talk about what we're going through at the fire department as far as our brain chemistry, just being up for 2 days straight, what that's like, and dealing with the public, and not, they're not always appreciative of the help that they're offered, and what that kind of does over time to our psyche, I guess. And so sometimes just giving them some tools as far as how they can maybe help us, or having, know what the signs and symptoms are for us, so they can help us recognize them as well, kind of team up a little bit. Cause a lot of them just like, I don't know what to do. I tried talking to him. I tried letting him relax, and he's not engaging. He's just engaged. And so that's the kind of stuff that the committee has kind of come up with. It's been pretty fun actually to build some of that stuff. And so that's kind of, so that's how I got into peer support. I just answered an email and started going, well, how can we make this bigger and better and get things out to the rank and file, so to speak. And so always looking for new things on a shoestring budget. I do this all at work on my free time. It's not a day spot. So it's whatever we can come up with during that time. We try and build it and resource out and get programs built.
So with that training with the spouses and the regional training, what is, I guess my question is going to be, what does mental health look like in the state and then at your department level? I mean, is it proactive? Is it reactive? Is it how is that handled?
It's been more reactive, just because of the stigma, right? There's always that stigma part of it. But I think we're really starting to pivot, turn that leadership around, and it takes forever to be more proactive. So the California Professional Firefighters Association is, obviously for California, they've been really aggressive in just social media and emails and getting the word out there. They've got a whole website called Healing Our Own. Got a lot of resources on there, interviews and that kind of stuff. So they've been pushing it quite a bit. That's kind of been my goal at Metro Fires, be more proactive. And how do we how do we have a safety that kind of catches people before, things are getting off tracks and, divorces and calling in sick all the time. The state, we're, without getting too political here, just in California, they're open to helping firefighters. It's always they want to support it. And it is supported now. And I think it's getting a lot better. There is still a stick for me. There's things that we'd like for me. I think, I think I've heard on one of your last podcasts as far as debriefings and how ineffective they can be. And the big ones, I agree. Those are kind of challenging at times. I do think, at least from the ones I've done, some diffusings have been effective, at least as far as having just a basic conversation, especially with young guys. Our department's a big turnover here, where I'm 48, but I am the old guy. There's a lot more young guys here than old. And I think a lot of them want to prove that they can handle this stuff, and they want to prove that they're okay. And so we're trying to be more proactive we have a class in the Recruit Academy. We have a class. It's an hour long talking about mental health. The Captain's Academy, the BC Academies, both have an hour long class about what they can do in the new rate as far as mental health, just being aware, building those relationships, that kind of stuff. So to kind of answer your question, we're in a gray area that I think is heading in the right direction as far as being more proactive on some of this stuff. And the nice thing is, when I started this 5 years ago, helping out, I got no calls from people as far as requesting resources. And now, I get a couple calls. Well, it ebbs and flows, but like this past month, I've had 2 people reach out for resources. And so that part has been nice. Not nice that they need it, but they recognize it and they're asking for help.
So how do you activate a peer support member? It's like, is it a phone call from, hey, or is it from an individual, or is it you paying attention to what these high acuity calls that go out, and then you reach out to people?
So, yeah, there's a couple ways. Usually with like the marital stuff where people just struggling, every email I send out regarding peer support, my number's on there. My phone number is always on there. And we have a running list of the people that are rostered, and we have a website we pay into with other departments called Firestrong. So we try and send that stuff out, but firefighters being what they are, the emails kind of get lost in translation or delayed or, that kind of stuff. But the nice thing with the goal here was always to have 10% of our membership trained in peer support. So that's about 70 people. So the goal is, no matter where you are on whatever ship, there's somebody that hopefully knows that is on peer support that you can call. You don't always have to call me or one of the other leads. That's really, I can't handle everybody. So the goal is to get those numbers out there so they can reach out. As far as the high acuity calls or we've had a couple things in place. So like pediatric codes, we do electronic PCRs here. And the nice thing is we can set up software, which we set up some software, and I don't know how they did it. I just said, hey, this department has this, can we do it? They worked it out. And so basically whatever buttons they push for a pediatric code, myself, the A-shift coordinator, the C-shift coordinator, get a random email from the software program, their software program, I guess. And all it says is this crew and this engine and these guys that were on the engine went on a pediatric code. So you capture those people. Doesn't tell you who the patient was. There's no HIPAA stuff in there at all. It's literally just the apparatus and the people. And then what we do, if it's on B shift, I'll email them and go, I got it. That way we're not kind of doubling up our efforts,
right,
and hounding people. And they'll do the same with us. And so then I'll reach out, and we've got an unofficial roster, and I'll just either make a phone call or shoot a text, or maybe go over there and go, hey, do you guys want to talk about this? If not, that's fine, but I'm going to email you at least some resources. And here's things to look out for. Here's how you contact a clinician. If you want help with that, please let me know. And that's as being as proactive as I think we can get with that kind of capture those calls. it's the MCI, the fire fatalities, and that kind of stuff has been a little more challenging. Our dispatch system here was built in the 80s.
Okay.
We're still working on upgrading that. So there's a lot of codes in there that have to be upgraded. But what the nice thing that's been good over the last couple of years is I've literally been called. I was at Costco once and I got a phone call from a dispatcher saying, hey, there's an MCI going on right now up in this area. Just putting it on your radar. And so from my phone, I can start pulling up who's on it and start making contact with ACs or the BC that might be aware. I'm sure they're aware of it, but start making those contacts. Go, hey, if you guys need a debriefing or diffusing or anything like that, let me know. We'll start setting it up. And so what's nice is I've gotten multiple calls like that from BCs. Go, hey, this happened. Can you check in with them? And so the awareness part of it has been nice that even BCs on up are reaching out and going, these guys had this call, very significant, or let's set up a debriefing or diffusing or something like that, and start having those conversations.
So when you say diffusing, what do you mean by that?
So diffusing is more of it's something that is supposed to happen within 8 hours of the incident, and it's much smaller. The way we kind of do it is, usually I'll just go to the station that was on the call. So if it's an engine medic, we'll go out. I'll call the BC, go, hey, these guys want to talk about this. They've always been supportive. They go out of service. I head over there. Usually if it's speed shift, I'll put my rig out of service also. We kind of head over there and just lay out some ground rules. It's basically kind of like a small debriefing. Go, hey, if you weren't on the call, no offense, but let's head over here. It's just the guys who are on the call. So, and no phones. It's all confidential. We're not getting into who messed up what. The whole goal of this is to start talking about it a little bit, start processing it a little bit. Kind of like with therapy stuff, just the more you talk about it, the easier it kind of gets and you start processing it. So usually it takes about a half hour. You don't have to talk. You don't want to, but I would encourage you to at least say what you did. And if there's questions, we can ask them. And then at the end, it usually helps if the company officer starts, because the younger guys are probably a little nervous to talk, and just talk about the incident, go around it. And then at the end I go, okay, well, here's some things to look out for over the next couple of weeks. Have some good coping skills. Don't drink on your 4 days, get some good sleep on your 4 days. If you can, I get it, life kind of kicks in and all that kind of stuff. It's just give them some tools as they leave to go home, that they don't sit there and stew on the call and think, oh, I should have done this or I should have done that. Just kind of start that. And then also offer up, you guys have a phone number. Here's the resources we have available with our EAP. If you want to talk to somebody, realize that we can attach services to this call, and it gets you more in depth. It gives you more visits, and they're longer visits, so they can do the EMDR and brain spotting kind of stuff. And it's all the way I approach is like, I can set it up for you. I can walk you through it. I can do whatever you guys need to get this set up. Just let me know if you want. And most times, guys, once they start talking about it, they seem to be doing pretty well. Like, I think most of us compartmentalize pretty well, and talking about it usually is enough. But we've got a couple guys that just have that dark cloud. One guy had a couple pediatric fatalities in a week, and it's just, on those, I really think you should at least try and talk to a clinician once and see if anything pops out. Just see what happens.
Do you guys have clinicians on staff?
No, but through that committee, through the regional committee, we vet clinicians so that they're culturally competent clinicians, and there's a running list that the whole region is aware of. We are here at Metro Fire that we negotiated in our last contract to get money that the district is paying. So the district agreed to a certain amount, and that money is going to our union to work on increasing our behavioral health resources, or whatever we kind of deem appropriate, and which is great. And it's a significant amount of money, and we're supposed to get that, I think, in November. So hopefully we start having meetings after the summer as far as how we want to incorporate that. And I've got my opinions on what I think would work. I think most people think we're just going to hire a clinician. I think if we do that, if the clinician has to do other things. They can't see 600, suppression people. And plus the other issue that I see with that is if they don't do marital stuff for kids, or like, you're kind of locked into whatever special, or if you just don't like the clinician,
Right.
you're never going to see them. So, but the nice thing is that it's funding that we get to decide kind of how we use it to help the membership. So that's promising. It's kind of it's a little daunting. You don't want to screw it up. I mean, most departments don't get this,
Right.
and we realize that. So we're trying to, I reach out to other departments, see what they would do or see what they do. Like our California Corrections, I think, has 60,000 employees, and I'm in contact with their lead psychologist. I think she's a psychologist, runs their behavioral health. And she's been great. She's like, here's what I would do. I'm around 60,000 people. You need somebody that does this, does this, does this, and so I'm trying to grab as much resources as I can. So when I do go to our VP at the union, go, hey, here's what I recommend. You guys obviously have the final say, but that way we kind of don't mess things up.
And I think that my next question is going to be just that. Where do you think you want to see the future of your peer support and in general, mental wellness in your department, in your state? Where do you want to see that head?
That's a big question.
It's a massive question. Yeah, that's the thing.
I know.
Yeah. Try to break that down piece by piece.
Yeah. So the interesting thing that I when I was talking to Brianna's a psychologist at the corrections, and she's very smart. And she's like, look, if you're trying to change the culture, you have to, it's going to take time. All right. It's one of those things that take 5-10 years. And she goes, it's very much like when physical fitness became important in the 80s and the 90s. And all of a sudden we're hiring coaches and we have a health and wellness area. And, that took 10, 15 years to get that department kind of built up. Because you need something like that to where if you hire a clinician, they're having some classes, they're going to the academy, they're having more than just a 1-hour class. They're talking more in depth about the grind of this profession. I mean, over here, we've got kids that are hired at 23, and if they want their full pension, they need to go to 57. I mean, that's a
massive amount of time.
That's a long time.
Right.
And I'm 48, until we would have to work another 9 years. That's very daunting a little, especially if you don't have the seniority to get to a slower house and you finally get some sleep, and which is most places in our department now don't sleep very much. So I like some of the stuff that I pulled from FDNY. I don't know, what I liked about what they had, what they've got little health and wellness centers. I think they've got 5 of them throughout different boroughs in the city that are just for the fire department. And it's free. I don't know how they paid for it. It's been a while since I've read the article, but they've got these health and wellness centers where if guys want to go have a class or talk to a clinician, they can just go and talk to them. And there's got to be some limit to that. But I think that having a health and wellness center that's kind of fully funded, so either through donations or however it's funded would be great. We have EAP. We've got multiple clinicians that don't take EAP. There are some programs out here that I like where you have a network of, some therapists are building their own network, and they're culturally competent. They can handle different calls and trauma. They know first responders, cops, and fire. And basically you pay that company a certain amount per month for so many clinician hours. I like that because it gives you a variety of clinicians. You're not just stuck with one. If you don't like that one, you know what I mean? So the network has a variety of clinicians that have a variety of specialties. So if you have shit issues, you can go see this. And it's something that, is kind of covered with the department. And I think that could be covered with what we've got coming in November. And it's going to come down to multiple people having opinions, but changing the culture, I think, is a big one. You got to get at the fire stations and have conversations with people, and having somebody that's, can explain brain spotting better than I can, or EMDR, and kind of why that's important, and start doing that.
I to be honest with you, I hadn't even heard about the New York City thing. The the mental health centers. I know we have our own. We have what we call the Resilience Center in my county, and it's like that. It's you have them. They're kind of, there's one for police, one for fire, one for each. And so then there's spillover too. So there's a few clinicians that work there, and it's free. We can sign up and go. We can go on duty, but we have to take some sick time, or you just go off on your off time.
Okay.
But it's invaluable if you ask me. I started doing it a year and a half or so ago, and I haven't been back it's been about a month and a half since I've been back right now. And so it's just something that if you can get more people to take advantage of it, it would be wonderful, because it is a free resource. And I think that is one part of the future for departments that should be kind of built in, is someone that's familiar with the population of first responders that is trained to do that, the therapy and the counseling.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I think is kind of the goal, is increasing those resources to the point where you have to make it easy for firefighters, because we'll just go home and think, we can fix it. I'll be fine. I'll just get a nice sleep and everything will be easy there. And so I think the easier you make it, I think it's more effective. And the more you talk about it, I mean, it's just something that you still have the guys that are struggling, that don't want to talk about that kind of stuff, or they think other guys need to just suck it up and do it, or handle the job the way they should handle the job. It's a grind. It just is. There's not a lot of sleep, and it's not even traumatic calls a lot of the time. It's just a lack of sleep. You're just year after year after year, it just builds up over time, and you're just kind of getting worn down, and then top off, a critical call here, a critical call there. It's kind of overwhelming sometimes when you think about it.
So what about you personally? Where do you think you're headed personally? On the job? What are some goals of your own?
I don't have any more goals. We just had a PC stats, and I came out, pretty. It did okay, and I don't know if I'll get a job out of it. But beyond that, continue to build this program as much as I can. I've got probably 6-7 years left, and the goal is, we're trying to get a peer support member on days. One of our neighboring departments has that. He's busy all the time. He's taking calls, he's driving to stations and having conversations with people, whatever it is. So I got to kind of figure that one out. I got to get ready for retirement. I realized a couple years ago that all I did was this job.
Yeah.
And I love being in the firehouse. It's to me, that's the best part of getting into this job was, I played a lot of sports, and you get that locker room feel, where you're just hanging out with guys and you're training and you're making fun of each other, but you're also good at your jobs. That's been my goal, is to kind of build that environment at the firehouse level, so that when those guys promote and go out, they take that same approach to the job and make it as fun as you can.
I love that approach. That's perfect. All right, I screwed up, because at the beginning of the episode, I have a new question I like to ask people. And so I'm going to have to kind of be fancy and splice it into the beginning, or some shit like that. I don't know what I'm going to do with it right now. Or I might just leave it here for this conversation and try to get my shit straight later down the road. I'm a huge music person. I love listening to music. I have it on almost all the time. So I've taken to asking people, what's the last song you heard?
The last song I heard, it's by... oh God, I'm gonna mess it up.
Yeah, look it up. Go for it.
Yeah, it's by Need to Breathe. I don't know if you heard them. They're a little bit of more of a Christian rock kind of. West Texas Wind.
West Texas Wind. Okay.
Yeah, all right. Live British Arena. It's a beautiful song. It's a beautiful song.
Well, there you go. Everybody go listen to it. Give it a listen to see. I just like to I kind of expand horizons on music. I think it's like reading. Sometimes we don't do enough of it. Or we get stuck in a loop and we only listen to the same stuff over and over again.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with branching out a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's get to the last two questions I ask everybody. What's an everyday carry for you? What's something that you can't leave home without? And if you do, you feel naked?
Yeah, I heard, I know you asked this one.
Yeah, it's not a surprise.
No, I know. So it's for me, it's my phone, but I think it's for different reasons than most people. I try to stay off my phone as much as possible. What I like in my phone are the I've got old pictures in there that are in an album that I go to when I need to look at past memories. So a lot of them are family related when my kids were younger, things that I remember from those days. Some of them are work related with old crews that I used to work with that just make me laugh. Some of the stuff that they would show me or do to me, and then you take a picture of it. That to me has been, I'll lay in bed sometimes after long days and just pull that album up and just kind of flip through those pictures and it just kind of goes, oh yeah, I remember that. But those are the things that are important. It's work is important and other things are important, finances and all that stuff. But to me, it's the relationships that, we build that I want to remind myself, this is why we do some of this stuff is to enjoy each other's company. That to me has been very important to me.
I guess not only that, it's kind of just a comfort thing as well.
Yeah.
I talked to somebody who said that they only watch old TV shows that they've seen over and over again. And I never knew that was actually kind of a trauma response because you know how that ends and there's no surprise in that. And so it's the same thing for you looking at old pictures. There's no surprise in that. You know what it brought you. And so it's a comfort for a mind that might be kind of scattered or whatever. I'm not saying your mind is scattered, but in other cases. So it's kind of interesting. I don't know if it's related to that or not, but that's where my head went when I heard you say that.
Yeah. It's nice.
What about a book? What have you read lately?
Never read lately.
Or it doesn't have to be lately. You can be, what do you want to share with the audience?
Well, there's, I'll give you three.
Okay.
I'll give you the last one I read was the Wisdom from the Bullfrog. I believe it's Admiral McRae was on Joe Rogan's podcast, leadership book.
Okay.
It's a very good one. I really enjoyed that. I really liked General Jim Mattis, Call Sign Chaos.
Mm-hmm.
That I read a lot of leadership books and military books. So those two were fascinating to me. The one that I think had the most impact on me was Meditations by Marcus Aurelius.
Okay.
And I kind of got into that after reading Dan Crenshaw's book. And I was like, what is this? He keeps referring back to Stoicism and Stoics and meditations, all that stuff. And I read it. And it's a weird book. I don't know if you've ever read it. It's not really a book. It's more like diary entries. But it was very matter of fact, seize the day, realize that death is right around the corner. Don't be afraid of it. But if you look at life that way, it kind of helps you realize, okay, this is a beautiful day. I get to enjoy that not everybody gets to enjoy. The biggest one that I learned from there was like, sometimes people just aren't going to like you. Some people just don't like you, and that's just the way it is. And then there's a lot of other just things in that book. As I read it, I go, man, it's just sometimes it can be so simple. You get distracted with other things. That's kind of why I like having pictures of my phone of old times. These are the things, those moments to me are what's more important. It kind of solidified what is important: living life, enjoying life, and making sure that you're present, day in and day out as much as you can.
That's excellent. And, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't ask one thing. And you volunteered to do this out of the blue. We've never spoken before. We've gone back and forth a couple of times on Instagram, but we've never spoken before. So I didn't know your story. I didn't know what you were going to come to the table with. And so I just want to kind of make sure that whatever you wanted to talk about, you had a chance to discuss. If there's anything else you wanted to add to what we've already talked about.
No, I mean, no, I didn't know what to expect either. But I don't have anything else to add except I appreciate what you're doing. I've listened to a handful of podcasts, and each one I listen to is very eye-opening. Everybody has a different story, but there's always some similarities, it seems like, attached with all of them. Everybody's kind of dealing with stuff. So that's, I think what you're doing is great. And I'm sending it out to the guys at our fire department and on my Instagram page. I try and cut paste podcasts. And the more I think we talk about this, no matter who's doing it, the better, I think.
Well, speaking about your Instagram page, because I know it's not just your personal page, but it is for your peer support team. Do you want to give people where they can find you?
The peer support one is
Sure.
just SacMetro Peer Support.
All right. So that's on Instagram. Are you on anything else, or just is it Instagram?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So go out and find them. I know you've shared a video or two with me, and I know the last one was about how the backups at the hospital, I believe, and how bad the wait times were and how crazy it can get. And we're not seeing it to that point yet, but we're definitely seeing some backups, and that just adds to the frustration. It adds to everything else that this job brings to you, and it's another thing that needs to be handled.
Yeah, and that's something that the CPF is really working with legislation. But I mean, as far as the firefighter, when you're up all night and then you're sitting on the wall for 7 hours for somebody who probably doesn't need an ER visit,
Right.
but now you're stuck there for 7 hours, and you realize you're going to go home and maybe have your kid's birthday the next day, and you're just like, oh, it's just that it's that vice grip. It's just slowly cranking down a little bit. I don't know, 7 hour wall times, it's a half a spin, and
Right. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Matt, I appreciate the conversation. Like I said, we didn't know where we were going to go. You got quite a bit to talk about.
Yeah, I feel like I did all the talking, so
It's
that's
okay.
all right.
That's all right. The less people have to hear me, the better.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right.
Well, I
man.
appreciate it.
We'll go out there and enjoy the rest of your day out there in California.
All right, you do the same.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Take care.
All right, you too.
All right. We're out.
Talking, so
It's
that's
okay.
all right.
That's all right. The less people have to hear me, the better.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right.
Well, I
man.
appreciate it.
We'll go out there and enjoy the rest of your day out there in California.
All right, you do the same.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Take care.
All right, you too.
All right. We're out.
Thanks for listening to another episode of The Things We All Carry. Head over to the website, thethingsweallcarry.com, for show notes, resources, and to sign up for the newsletter. Until next week, take care of yourselves and remember to check in on each other.